Hello and welcome to this prismatic machining instructional video. In this video we're going to look at how do we go about creating our first setup in CATIA. There are a number of things that have to be defined as part of the setup. These include the machine that you're going to use, coordinate systems, the geometry you're going to use, and so on. So to do this, what we're going to do is we're going to start by opening up an existing file. So let's go ahead and open up some geometry. So go to the Open tool. And if you navigate on the desktop to the MF332 folder or course materials, and we're going to go under CATIA training files and prismatic example 1. So we're going to work with the geometry that's been defined in this CAT product, the VF2-S1-prismatic_1 CAT product. So let's go ahead and open this up. So this shows you the part that we're going to be working with through the rest of this video series, as well as the fixturing element, the table of the machine, and so on. So now I'm going to go to Start under Machining, jump into the Prismatic Machining application. And you can see that the geometry has been integrated into the PPR tree under the product list. I have that assembly which contains all the geometry, the part geometry, final part, the stock, and the fixture elements. So we're going to focus now on the process part of the tree. And if we go under the process branch, you'll see that there's something called a part operation. And if we expand that out, you'll see inside there's something called a manufacturing program. Now the best way to think about a part operation is a setup. So if you have a part, you may have to machine it in multiple setups. A setup being you fixture the part in one orientation, perform a set of operations, and then you flip the part to another orientation, refixture it, and then repeat that. So each orientation is typically what we refer to as a setup. So to kind of drive that point home, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this from part operation.1 into setup.1. So I'm going to go to Properties, right-click Properties, and I'm going to change this to setup.1. Now, in every setup, you can have one or more manufacturing programs. A manufacturing program would correspond to a program that you'd run on the CNC machine. It may be possible that in a setup, you have multiple very complicated areas that need to be machined. And rather than trying to do that all in one program, it makes more sense to split them up. So that's why you may have multiple programs. If you want to insert a program, an additional program into a setup, you need to go over here to this toolbar, which is the manufacturing operations tool, manufacturing programs toolbar. And then this icon here, or this tool here, allows you to, if I click on this and click on manufacturing program 1, what it does is it inserts a program underneath that. So now I have the option to create operations in two separate programs within this one setup. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this though, because we're not going to do that. You can also add multiple setups, of course, and that's what this other tool here does. So if I click on this tool and then click on setup 1, what it did was it added a new part operation. So I'm going to rename this as I did the first one, call it setup 2. So properties. And then I'm going to go ahead and add a manufacturing program to it, because right now it doesn't have any program associated with it. So let's click on manufacturing program, click setup 2, and now I have a manufacturing program in there. So that's kind of how you would go about adding more setups to your process. Now notice if I click on setup 1, geometry appears. If I click on setup 2, it disappears. When you add new setups, CATIA does not automatically assume that the geometry you want to machine for that setup is the same as the geometry used previously. You have to explicitly tell it that you want to use that geometry. So if you're wondering why the geometry does not disappear, that's the reason why. It's been defined for setup 1, but it's yet to be explicitly defined for setup 2. So to summarize in this video, I showed you how to add setups and manufacturing programs. Setups are called part operations by default by CATIA, but it makes more sense to think of them as setups.